There's something different about waking up at midnight. It's not just the crispness of the air or the unique quality of silence that blankets everything. It's the awareness that you've crossed an invisible barrier into another realm where time feels sticky and strange. Midnight has always been an unspoken divider between the ordinary and the supernatural. I had just turned 16 the week before, liberated by the tumultuous uncertainties of teenage defiance. The very ground in my mind was shifting like tectonic plates, causing everything stable to tremble. That's why, when I woke up just after the grandfather clock chimed 12 times, restless curiosity wrapped around me like a tight shroud, drawing me irresistibly towards the guest room at the end of the hall. Growing up, the rule was clear: never open the guest room after midnight. I was part of a small family in a much too large house, and we didn't host guests, not since before I could remember. My parents insisted the rule was practical, provided to avoid disrupting the quiet hours of our sleep. But we all knew it wasn't that simple. When I was younger, I tried to ask why. My mother would pinch her lips tightly so that no words could escape. My father would gaze off into the distance, a shadow passing over his eyes like a phantom. I peered down the hall, the floorboards gleaming under the silver sheen from the half-opened curtains. The carpet was worn in places, revealing the stories of those who had tread there before. A sense of yearning surged through me. Some ancient and primitive part of me needed to know what lay beyond the door. There was a kind of hush around the guest room, an aura that signaled forlorn abandonment. Yet beneath the surface I could feel a pulse, an echo of something once vibrant. It was a promise of secrets well kept, or perhaps better left concealed. Silent as the shadows themselves, I padded down the corridor. There was no sound, save for the rhythmic pounding of my heart, threatening to break free from the confines of my chest. My hand, moments later, was ghosting over the doorknob, trembling ever so slightly. I pulled my hand back twice before finally daring to close my fingers around the cool brass, its lifelessness a painful contrast to the warmth throbbing in my palm. My mind conjured images to spur my hesitation, whispers in the dark, invisible eyes watching from the void as the lock released with a soft, almost reluctant, click that echoed endlessly in the deep silence. The door swung open, smooth and unresisting, as if eager to reveal its truths. My breath caught in the back of my throat as the room was bathed in pale lunar light, displaying what little it held. An immaculately arranged bed stood sentinel in the middle of the room, sheets pressed as if anticipating an inspection. The smell hit me first, cloying and sweet, like old roses mingled with something earthy. Not decay, but close to it. My eyes darted around the sparse furnishings, half expecting to see a specter lurking in the corners. Nothing. It wasn't until I stepped fully inside, the room's stillness pressing in on me, that I noticed the outline on the bed. Someone had been there. Recently. That much was clear by the lingering heat emanating from the mattress, suffusing the air around it. The indent in the pillow bore the suggestion of a head, now vanished but definitely present not moments before. I turned on my heel, expecting to find an intruder hiding in my blind spot. It made no sense. The time, the secrecy, this room that was never used. My legs felt leaden as curiosity gave way to annoying anxiety. The walls loomed closer as though they shifted inward, ready to swallow me whole. I backed out of the room, closing the door with deliberate precaution, banishing the cold heat that seemed to defy natural order. My fingers lingered momentarily on the handle, conscious of some invisible bond, some connection to an unknown other. Yet as I retracted my hand, feeling the safety of the hallway enveloping me once more, a fleeting sense of trespass remained. I made my way back to my room, emotions swirling, a storm of confusion, fear, and a strange new awareness that I didn't particularly like. Morning seemed to come grudgingly. The sun's rays filtered through clouds, casting diffused patterns on the floor like soft lace. I felt worn, like fabric left out in the elements too long. At breakfast, my father sat across from me, absently turning the pages of his newspaper. My mother was busy fluttering around the kitchen, her movements interwoven with an anxious energy. "And how did you sleep?" my father asked, his eyes studying the paper too intently. It was too casual, too rehearsed. I opened my mouth but found the words stuck, suspended in a web of untruths I didn't know I was a part of. "Fine," I offered, voice catching slightly. My mother paused in her movements, a perceptible moment of taut silence knitting the air before she resumed. They shared a glance, a flicker, an understanding passed between them that excluded me completely. That's when the reality struck me, a realization insidious and choking. They knew. Of course they knew. This charade, this endless cycle of avoidance was for my benefit. The room, left closed, harbored something beyond mere explanation. And so the day crawled by, each hour tipped in anticipation of night. In the pale light of dusk, shadows stretched longer, deeper. I couldn't shake the haunting impression left by the warmth in an empty room. Later, lying awake in bed, my mind reeled, the room a persistent whisper that would not be silenced. Sleep was restless, tumultuous, filled with dreams, or were they memories of figures at the threshold, faces obscured? The tug of something wanting to be known pulled at the edges of my consciousness. I woke again as if summoned. The house was wrapped in the stillness of night, the hour past midnight. As if on some unwritten cue, I slipped out of bed, drawn to the saturated silence where possibilities bled into one another. Feet bare against cold wood, I retraced my path, heart caught in an endless loop of anticipation and dread. Each step resonated with fragmented echoes as I approached the source of my unease, the guest room, door shut as I'd left it. Or had I? Again, the door yielded easily to my touch. There was a part of me that knew what to expect, some intrinsic awareness from the night before. But still, the room's unerring secrecy shattered over me anew. The sheets were rumpled this time, disturbed, not neatly aligned as they had been initially. An undeniable chill coursed through my limbs despite the pervasive warmth spilling forth. I retreated, the air filled with phantom whispers and the relentless, steady thrum of my heart. In the dark embrace of the hall, I stopped, listening, a vigilant animal. But no sounds betrayed the presence of what I feared was there, lurking just at the edge of understanding. Moments later, with the weight of inevitability settling over me, I returned and latched the door. As I moved back to my room, the night stretched infinitely, dense with the burden of unknown stories pressing through cracks in the walls. When dawn spilt its weary light over the world, I felt agitated, like a cog knocked out of place. The breakfast table mirrored its own quiet horrors wrapped in yesterday's familiarity. "Is everything all right?" My mother's question trembled, careful, probing at the edges of something delicate. "I I was stopped, a sensation more powerful than I was returning, the desire to tell them everything. But secrecy had its grip, and so, shaking my head gently, I met her eyes briefly. There was something there, a pleading for understanding, or perhaps it was forgiveness. My father's stoic facade crumbled slightly, a sigh escaping his lips. And I really looked at him for the first time in years, lines deeper set, eyes worn, shouldering a legacy of silent guardianship I was only beginning to grasp. They saw beyond my spoken words, felt perhaps even the unbreakable thread binding me to the inexplicable room. It was then, in the ache of oppressive silence, that I realized maybe they'd been waiting for this all along. This moment of comprehension, my cracking the seal of ignorance to see into the heart of our shared disquiet. Yet for all their knowledge, the door remained unopened by them as well. There was something there, something frangible spun by secrets too ingrained to uproot entirely. and life, despite everything, continued, as it always must. But thereafter, the pulse in my nights was forever changed. A rhythm, like a distant call across a veil too thin for comfort. And though years would pass before I pressed my ear to the wall and listened, truly listened, I knew I had become part of whatever wove itself into the fabric of our nights. I never opened the door again, but in dreams, a space that grants its own kind of access, I stood at its threshold, unafraid in the half-light of unspoken truths. Even now, when I'm away from the house, kilometers and ages removed from those haunted hallways, I sometimes awake at midnight, feeling the binding heat of that absent presence echo through an invisible tether woven through blood. A legacy, a doorway, and a bed always warm.